Hello and welcome back to Essentially Explained, the podcast on economics and everything surrounding it, political, business, what have you. Yet again, I am joined by Daniel Marks. Daniel Marks, how are you doing?
Good afternoon. I am fine. I am slightly tired. It's been a long weekend, but it's okay. Don't worry. I'm going to do this today for all of you guys. I hope you recognise the noble sacrifice I'm making.
Yeah, all 10 of
So,
you or whoever, how many people are
well,
watching.
hold on a minute. No, our last video, well, our first, I should say, actually was a hit.
Or was it?
It was. It's been viewed so many times that I think we're going to be millionaires. We might only need to do one more video, and then we're set for life.
Yeah, a whopping 21 views as I'm looking at it, so...
Oh, I can see 14 at the moment, so that's good, isn't it? A reliable source there. Thanks, YouTube. Cheers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cheers, YouTube. One like, one dislike, so we can't be doing that badly.
Oh God, we've got a dislike. Oh no.
Oh no, that's from one of my mates who have decided to help us
Oh,
out a
thanks.
little bit.
Cheers for the help. Thanks for the extra marketing there. You've really done us a service.
Yeah, I mean he's not
Oh,
going to hear this. He's probably already disliked it by this point and clicked off. Anyway,
oh
today we're going to be
yes.
talking about income inequality, and
Mm,
essentially this has been inspired by not the most exciting of sources, but a lecture I was listening to the other day, and we were discussing about income inequality in general, but also how income inequality has increased since the 1970s. Although there is some data to suggest that the growth in that inequality has not been quite as severe as it first seems. So I'll just give you some data I found.
oh, good.
So
Goody.
very interesting stuff.
Everyone, hold on to yourselves here. This is gripping.
So essentially, if we're just having a look at the US really quickly, in the 1970s, I think from memory, the income tax was at around 40%,
Okay.
whilst nowadays it's obviously substantially lower.
It is.
So obviously you could make a case that incomes in the 1970s for the top earners were understated, which is why the gap seems so much bigger than it actually is. What sort of thoughts do you have about that?
So, I mean, I can only really speak from a UK perspective because it's the system I have the most knowledge of. I'm sure it's not the same everywhere, but the UK tax system is what's known as a progressive tax system. So essentially, what that means is that the tax system is, if you like, put into different bands. So people with different income pay different levels of tax, and that makes sense. And what it means is that essentially the highest earners are actually taxed higher. They pay more tax, of course. And what that does for the lower bands is it essentially draws that line of inequality, um, I guess slightly closer, in the sense that inequality is less severe thanks to the tax system. It actually produces a positive outcome for people on lower bands. There's something called the Personal Allowance in the UK, which is essentially a sum of money you're allowed to earn, a threshold, if you like, of your salary or money that you earn, which is not taxed and not subject, therefore, to any deductions. It's only after that you actually start paying a certain amount. And so, actually, the UK tax system does do a lot to reduce income inequality, if you like. But obviously there are ways of getting around that that often make it um, actually far less effective.
That's a really good point, actually. You just sort of touched on it there about how the top earners can obviously get around income tax in a number of ways. Obviously, whether that be relocate their residences to Monaco or various
Holy
other.
cow! There's a huge spider on my window. Hello, sir. Anyway, sorry, Karen. That's probably the biggest spider I've ever seen. Anyway, carry
That's rather throwing me off. Rather
on.
interesting all the
You weren't
same.
expecting that. I promise you, we hadn't planned that.
No, totally not. What's the word? Yeah, planned. I can't think English now.
Planned
Anyway,
plot. What?
anyway. So essentially, what is a difficult thing for a government to sort of manage, I guess, is obviously if you have income tax too high, on the top earners, then they'll, as we've just touched on there, will just relocate elsewhere. However, if obviously you've got it too low, then people, those higher income earners, won't be sort of contributing enough to society, I guess, is the general argument. It's quite a
Yeah,
difficult balance.
yeah. I mean, the tax system in certain countries like the UK can do an enormous amount of good, and other European tax systems as well. But I think in the UK definitely there's a negative connotation around the idea of tax rises, and quite rightly you can understand why, because it means people have got less disposable income, which of course affects purchasing power and then consumption. If you want to go back to a sort of macro model, you've got AD consumption falls. But the thing you have to consider is that tax rises, in their own essence, can actually reduce in income inequality in different ways. I know income inequality is often measured, purely by income, and so it should. But inequality as a whole takes more than one form. You have inequality in terms of living standards, and actually tax rises, which can help fund, public spending, can go on things like healthcare, education, which can not only improve, current levels of inequality. You can literally earn more, literally be healthier, but also your future prospects. If you can live long, you can earn more, and if you can earn more, then your level of inequality, if you like, is reduced.
Okay. I mean, just a quick hot take from you. Do you think the UK tax brackets are essentially the best for the here and now, or do you think the higher tax bracket should
Um,
be taxed more?
so, I mean, this is going to get quite political now, so this could be quite interesting. I would say the actual difference between the tax bands, the way that, for example, the upper band is 45% and the lowest is 20%. And the lowest, by the way, is called I believe it's the basic, and you have additional and higher. I think the difference between them tax bands, 25% from the bottom to top is a good difference, but I don't honestly think the amount of tax that we pay is enough. That's my personal opinion. I think that yes, richer, wealthier people on higher salaries should be taxed more. Not a huge amount, I think somewhere around the 50% mark, but I guess it's hard to put down an arbitrary figure. But the truth is, in the UK, we pay less tax on average than most other European countries and a lot of other countries in the world. And the reason that is because, I don't know, we live in a fairly capitalist system. I think we can probably agree on that. And people generally don't like to lose a lot of their money, but actually, if we were to put taxes up, we might actually see inequality reduce in different ways. But yeah, that's my opinion, really.
Okay. I mean, just quickly returning to your point about inequality, obviously taking forms beyond income, wealth, and living standards. Obviously, income and living standards can be correlated quite well.
Hmm.
Obviously, higher income doesn't mean always. It should mean a higher standard of living. I mean,
Yeah, unless you're in the Wolf of Wall Street, then yeah.
yeah, great movie. Recommend for anyone that
Yeah,
hasn't
life
watched it.
expectancy is significantly down with that life.
Yes, yeah, it's not advisable to take that route for sure. But yes, I mean, taxes. I mean, it's an interesting argument, isn't it? Because you were talking about how obviously the money you get from taxes can be redistributed to increase the quality of life for those
Yeah,
in with lower incomes. But then there is another school of thought that inequality in itself drives people in lower income brackets to innovate, to sort of, it gives them the incentive to drag themselves up into a high income bracket, if that makes sense.
I personally don't subscribe to that view. I think there's a certain word that I would use to describe that notion. If I were not on this video, I would use it. Uh, but the truth is, if you have someone, let's look at the case of a homeless person. Okay, this is quite um, personal now. I mean, if you do know someone that's in a homeless state, actually the truth is you should be sympathetic towards them. If you take someone who's in a homeless state, okay, they can't get a job for starters because they haven't got a permanent place of address, so legally can't get a job. and they're reduced to living on the streets. How are they then meant to innovate themselves? What do you expect of them? You just expect them to suddenly one day think, "Oh, I'm going to make a difference here," and go to the job center or whatever and get themselves a job, and everything's happy as Larry. It's not the case. You have to take into account other things. If we're talking about individual motivation here, which is, I guess, a bit of a tangent from the original topic, but it's relevant. Human beings don't just work like that in the sense that one day we think, oh yes, we can do this and get up and do it. A lot of people in lower income suffer from psychological problems, such as like depression, and other mental issues that can really severely lower your mental state, your motivation, your drive, and therefore your ability to succeed in the world. And I think that's the point where others need to step in, be kind, and actually help them out. If that means there was the government recently announced in 2020, this is a new policy. The name escapes me at the moment, but it was essentially it's aimed at giving people who don't have A levels, these are sort of like older adults, free training in higher level education to try and essentially get a different job, if you like, try and improve their life standards. And that's exactly the sort of thing that needs to be done. It's very unlikely that then people would have been able to do that themselves because they just simply wouldn't have the money. So actually sometimes government and other people need to step in to improve life chances and therefore reduce inequality.
You know what? That's actually a really good scheme. Obviously, I would have to research more into it. However, at face value, the idea of free training for those that haven't had the opportunity, maybe they wanted to go straight into work so they could help their family out or whatever reason, I think it's a great policy. I think obviously there could be an argument about restructuring the education system to give people more applicable skills than is currently taught. I guess that you could make an argument. Obviously, I know this is straying more into the education side rather than the economic side. And it's still applicable because you're still trying to manage your human capital in the most effective way possible. So by changing the education system, by making it less exam-based, I guess, and making it more skill-based, that could be go a large way into helping young people find jobs. Obviously, youth unemployment is still a massive problem, especially in the UK and a number of countries.
It's not just the UK problem; it's a Western problem, if you like. Spain as a country suffers. I think we discussed this in the previous video actually about this youth unemployment. Spain, the US, all countries that suffer with youth unemployment. This policy I mentioned is aimed at more elderly people and older adults, but younger people are really in the same band, if you like, because but if you like, they're more multiple, I guess, really, aren't they? You come out of school with your GCSEs and probably your A level, your BTEC, or whatever you do. And if you haven't got the right skills from that course, then you're going to find it very hard to get a job in whatever it is you want to do. And actually, the ability to retrain is something that needs to be made more accessible to people, I think.
Yes, that is an excellent point. I think.
Thank you, teacher.
Yeah, that's something that
I can imagine an essay now, and you're like, "Oh, good point. Oh, well done."
Yeah, good point. Great analysis. Needs more evaluation. All that good stuff.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, no, I do agree. It should be all about giving people that haven't had the opportunity the skills to sort of flourish. I mean, returning it briefly back to your point about some people not having the chance to essentially come up with an idea on the spot. And, let's say a homeless person, they don't have the opportunity to start up their own business, really.
Yeah.
And, become a multimillionaire overnight. So I also agree with your theory or your argument against the school of thought that not necessarily high, but income inequality is a sort of motivator. Maybe it's a motivator for those in middle income brackets, I guess, with already that have the opportunity.
I think it depends. Most people in the middle brackets tend to be sort of mostly professionals. So like people involved in law firms or accountants, doctors, surgeons, they tend to be within the sort of middle higher bands. So a lot of them are on that money because they've reached where they want to be. They've been through school and hopefully where we'll end up. Yeah. They've been through school and university and all that, and they've done that. And yeah, I think honestly that's probably the best place to be, maybe in terms of income. I think it's the ideal going rate. I think it's about trying to get more people the opportunity to get up the ladder, if you like, make that middle class bigger.
Yes, which I think that's what every developing country is probably aiming for, or will sort of experience a growing middle class, essentially, as their sort of
Yeah,
economy.
China's experienced a massive growth in their middle class in the last sort of 10, 20 years. For example, which is something you can sort of account to sort of rapid growth, if you like.
Yeah, because obviously they've moved from a largely agricultural primary sector economy to obviously secondary and now even more um, tertiary
Oh,
sector economy. I know, throwing
yeah,
these terms out left, right, and centre. But
yeah,
but yeah, obviously the manufacturing sector at some point will decline. I think that's quite an interesting topic. I know this is straying off again, but China will eventually move away from a secondary sector economy as Southeast Asian countries sort of overtake them, become more efficient in producing goods.
yeah. I mean, yeah. If we try and drag it back to the topic at hand,
Yeah,
yeah, no, this is actually something because inequality doesn't just apply to the UK or one country. You can actually look at it in an international way, if you like. I guess I was actually this is actually something quite relevant. I was watching a lecture myself the other day, and obviously it had the basic graph of countries with average inequality and also the top 10%, if you like, the upper docile of incomes in each country. And the scale of it was enormous. Um, some countries were relatively flat, which indicates sort of like a fairly level amount of income throughout the whole country. And actually, China isn't too bad, I guess. Actually, one of the countries with the highest levels of inequalities, believe it or not, is actually the US. Um, it's a different sort of way because if we go into poverty, I guess is a relevant topic. In the US, you'll see lower levels of what's called absolute poverty, which is below a certain standard of income. I can't remember what it is now. It's like $1.35 or something like that a day.
yeah,
And it essentially means that you don't even have enough to live. You could be without a home, you can't afford to put food on the table, and so forth. That's one level which you won't see particularly in more developed countries like European countries, Western countries, and things. But some other nations, maybe in Africa, South America, will have higher levels of absolute poverty. Even though absolute poverty is going down a lot these days, really, across the whole world, which is obviously a good thing. But what is a problem is relative poverty. And essentially, what that means is the difference, if you like, between what you earn and, for example, like the median figure,
yeah.
and the sort of, if you look at the sort of proportion of what you earn to the median figure in your country. And actually, in the UK, the US, and Western countries, that is a big problem.
Yes, I mean, I think especially in the US. I mean, the US is sort of understandable, having a high sort of inequality level. Obviously, it's quite difficult to say because it will obviously vary from state to state because each state's managed differently. However, I think it's difficult to say really. I think the US it could perhaps make it more sort of in terms of managing inequality, more national level endeavor, I guess,
Yeah,
and sort of more national standards, whether that be introducing more healthcare acts or
yeah. I
reforming
mean, that's one way
education.
of doing it.
Yeah, I think also that returning sort of back to the concept of income inequality, and I guess sort of one final point from that school of thought we introduced a little while ago. If I guess if you try too hard to tackle income inequality, then there could be an argument that because you're restricting essentially the top earners, you're restricting economic growth in that way, because obviously, or whether that be
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. There is that argument that actually, too heavy taxing, like you were saying, or It's too big a welfare state, I guess, which is something else that can be used to reduce inequality. Yes, it can actually reduce the levels of economic activity. If you drag the high achievers, the people who arguably contribute the most to the economy down, you could of course weaken economic growth. And weakening economic growth is never a good thing when you're trying to reduce inequality, because there's only so many resources to go around. There's only so much capital and money to go around. And if you try and take that away from the top, it's the bottom. That'll work for so long, but eventually you'll end up with one class, one system. And obviously that isn't really the goal of reducing inequality. It's just in life, you have to accept it. A fairly capitalist system that we live in, there's going to be different levels of income. There's going to be some inequality, but it's about reducing that level and trying to give everyone an opportunity to move up if they want to, but that purely is down to the individual.
Yes, and I think that's a good final sort of thought to leave it on for today. We'll try and make these sort of podcasts around 20 minutes or so. I think the first one was a tad too long.
We both agree that we'll probably at this point have fallen asleep after about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is probably never a good thing. I mean, I guess we could always remark it and go on something like Headspace or something like that. I think it'd be brilliant for them. We could put people to sleep in minutes.
Yeah, we would be a rather good advertising front for them, I guess. But yes, I think it's been a rather good discussion about income inequality. Maybe we'll do a future video sort of clarifying, probably more so what I've said, because I'm not quite as concise and good at explaining things. So, thank you, Dan, for joining me again.
It's okay. I'm going to go back to sleep now.
Okay, and I'll see you guys later.
Thank you very much.